This is the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, and I think the best way to review this phone is to compare it to last year's S23 Ultra. I also want to reassure S23 Ultra users that you have no reason to be jealous. Like, the upgrade this year is so minor. Like, you're really not missing out on much. Like, I get it if you're a tech head and you want to take advantage of Samsung's pre-order deals and you just want the latest smartphone, totally respect it. But if you're on a budget and you spent a lot of money on your previous device, you are not missing much at all. I absolutely promise. But look, it's a big phone. Like, it's always been a big phone, and this year they've decided to move towards titanium. It has like a grayish color to it, but depending on how the light reflects off it, it sometimes gets a yellow tone. If you're interested in how it looks to the iPhone's titanium gray color, this is what it looks like. The iPhone's a little bit more gray, but they both look good in their own merit. I have to say, I kind of wish they reduced the weight of this phone. Like, yes, it's 4 grams lighter, but it's not 15 or 20 like titanium's supposed to do. And that would have made this bigger phone feel a little bit smaller in the hand. Speaking of the hand, the edges are now squared, or at least the body is squared off. Like, the sides are still rounded, so it feels, rounded in the palm. But because the edges on the S23 Ultra are slightly curved, I do find holding the previous one a little bit more comfortable. Like, it feels a little bit more cozy in the hand, where this just feels a bit boxy. Now look, I prefer a boxier phone. I've always found flat edges to be better for typing on. Not that the previous S23 Ultra had severe curves to the point where it got in the way of your typing, but it's still a curve at the end of the day. So that's the trade-off. Slightly better typing or a slightly better hold in the hand. This year they changed a couple of things, like on the bottom of the phone, the way the speaker looks like, it's now just kind of like a slit rather than little grills. Placement of the SIM card and obviously the Type-C ports are in the exact same spot. I do notice that the S Pen on the S24 sticks out a little bit. Like, on the previous model, it's more flush with the body, but this new one kind of sticks out of the bottom, and I don't like that. The good news though is that the pen color actually matches the body of the phone. If you guys don't remember, on previous Ultra devices, the pen was just always black, which was kind of annoying. Like, I wanted everything to match, and it looks like this year they did that. Other changes are the mic holes on top. You now get 2 with the S24 Ultra. My guess is it's an extra microphone, maybe for noise cancellation, or if you're pointing this at somebody to better pick up their voice. But the biggest thing I noticed right away with these phones was the display. Because even though they're both using a 6.8-inch display, they both ramp up to 120 hertz. They have LTPO, so they can dynamically adjust. It was the contrast, okay? This new S24 Ultra has a anti-reflective coating as part of the display, which means you get less reflections. Like, just doing simple things like, moving the display up and down right here, you can see that the S23 Ultra on the right is picking up way more reflections than the S24. But the downfall to this is you do lose some of that vibrancy. Now, some people have suggested to crank up the vibrancy in settings. It doesn't make a difference. It's not going to make a difference. It's like buying an Apple Pro XDR display, right? You can buy one with a nano coating, which reduces reflections, or you can buy one without, which gives you more reflections, but the panel in general, because you're using straight glass, looks more vibrant. It's the same sort of idea here. Now, the downfall to this is I did notice some colors look a little bit off, specifically yellows and reds. They look a little bit more dull. Blacks are not 100% black. They kind of look grayish, if that makes any sense. Now, that kind of stuff, I feel like they could update via software, but the S23 Ultra is always going to look more contrasty no matter what setting you have the brightness on. I also noticed that the screen mode under the display settings on the S24 Ultra kind of doesn't work. Like, when I go to it and I switch back and forth between natural and vivid, I don't see that much of adjustment. Like, I see a slight hue change. Nothing is drastic compared to the S23 Ultra, but it's pretty much not there. Even when I take the white balance and I move it up or down, nothing happens. So this is obviously something that needs to change. Like, even the reds, look at this. I'm moving the reds and the greens and the blues up and down. nothing is moving on the screen. The selfie cameras are in the exact same spot. They're still 12 megapixels. They're pretty much the same camera. I did not notice any difference when it came down to selfies or portrait photography. All right, so now you're looking at the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra and the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra front-facing cameras, shooting in 4K 30. I apologize. It has not been sunny in Toronto for a long time. I would have loved to see how this handles the sun and obviously being really bright outside, but here we are. Most importantly, you guys let me know which one obviously looks better and of course, which microphone sounds better. Now, what's truly different is obviously the processor that's inside of here. We're talking about a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 versus an 8 Gen 2. It's significantly faster. Will you notice it on day-to-day tasks like checking your email and browsing the net? Absolutely not. I did not notice a difference in terms of everyday use. Where I did notice it was in little things. So like if I was taking a picture at nighttime and I used night mode, if the S23 Ultra took 3 seconds to take that picture, the S24 Ultra could do it in 1 second. So you get faster processing times. If you're a hardcore madman and he plays mobile games all day, that's when you might notice a difference as well. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 is obviously better for that. But in terms of like heat management, they're pretty much identical. And I know Samsung made a big deal of the S24 Ultra having better cooling this year, but I'm just not noticing a difference. Like it's pretty much on par with last year's model. I will say though that it doesn't drain as much battery as the 8 Gen 2. Like on my 3D Mark Wildlife stress test, we lost about 10% battery with the S23 Ultra compared to only about 6 or 7 on the S24. And since we're on the topic of battery, nothing has changed in terms of battery size. It's still a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. We're still fast charging at 45 watts. We're still wireless charging at 10 or 15 watts, and obviously can reverse wirelessly charge at 4.5 watts. I did notice a little bit better battery life on the S24 Ultra, but not by much. Like I wouldn't be saying it's a significant upgrade. For example, on a heavy day for me, taking it off the charger at like 6:30 in the morning, ending it at about 11, 54% battery life left, which is really good. And I had about 3 hours of screen on time. So that's really good. Like ending the day with 54% left, 13 hours of being on is good. Now the camera changes are a bit different this year. Like they still share the exact same 200 megapixel wide lens, but they kind of swapped out the 10 times optical 10 megapixel lens to a 50 megapixel 5 times optical lens on the S24 Ultra. They both still have a 10 megapixel 3 times optical lens, and they both have a 12 megapixel ultra wide lens. So what does this mean in English? Not a lot, okay? Not a lot. Like most of the shots look very, very similar. And again, the differences this time are coming down to a couple of things. I'm finding that the S24 Ultra is taking a lot more natural looking photos. Again, not by much. Like we're splitting hairs over here, but it tends to look a little bit more natural, not as contrasty, and they're not bumping up the exposure as much as they do on the S23 Ultra. But the differences are minor. The other thing to note is the optical range. I'm finding that anywhere from 3 to 9 times zoom, it looks better on the S24 Ultra. And then from 10 to 100 times digital zoom, it's looking better on the S23 Ultra. Having that 10 times optical lens gives it more range past 10 times, whereas having that bigger 50 megapixel lens just does a better job between 3 and 10. Personally, I would rather have the 50 megapixel lens. I don't really zoom 100 times. I'm usually within the 10 and below range. So if it's gonna look a little better, I'd rather keep that. Video is weird though. I actually prefer the video on the S23 Ultra. They're very similar again, okay? But it looks a little bit more contrasty on the S23 Ultra, and I think at first glance, it just looks a bit more appealing to me. But maybe the S24 Ultra is slightly better when it comes to object image stabilization, but I'm just looking for small differences here, and I'm pretty much calling this a tie. Now, AI has been a big topic, and obviously Samsung and Google partnered to create some scenarios that you can use AI with this new S24 Ultra. I do want to mention that there was some fine print saying that these features will be free up until 2025. I don't know what's gonna happen again. Are they all of a sudden gonna start charging you to use these AI features? My guess is by then there's gonna be so many more AI features available. There might be some sort of subscription, or it will just be pretty much standard with every phone that it won't even really matter in a couple of years. But we'll have to see how Samsung handles this. But if you want to access some of these new features, under Advanced Features in the Settings menu, you go to Advanced Intelligence, and you can see some of the things that this phone can do. I think for me, getting real-time translations during a voice call is pretty cool. Like being able to talk to someone who doesn't speak the same language as you and have it translated right in the spot and have a conversation is really handy. Samsung's keyboard can basically take the grammar that you're typing out, make some suggestions, and perfect the message before sending it off. Not really new, we've seen this before with other apps, but it's great that it's baked into the phone. Samsung Notes can automatically format, summarize, correct, translate, and generate covers for your notes. So Samsung Notes is actually getting better than it really is. It's underrated, Samsung Notes. Like if you're in the Samsung ecosystem, check out Samsung Notes. Like it's actually really good. Voice recorder, same idea as Google's Live Transcribe. It'll take what you're saying, write it down so that you can turn it into notes for later on. So as you can see from this video, the S24 Ultra is a wonderful phone. Is it a big upgrade from the S23 Ultra? Absolutely not. So please do not buy it. If you already have the S23 Ultra, your phone is still beautiful. I will say though, if you're a tech head and you just want the latest device, do what you gotta do. Like, this is your life. Enjoy it. If you have the money, go for it. But if money is important to you and you don't want to spend it and you want to keep it for something else, you have no reason to be jealous, because it's like wearing the same shirt again, just this time it's a little bit more vibrant. But yeah, is this phone going to be the phone of the year? It's looking good. It's looking good. I feel like Samsung still needs to update the camera to be a little bit more consistent. I feel like Samsung has to update screen mode for the display so that you can adjust the brightness a little bit more. But it comes down to whether or not you want a display that's anti-reflective or a display that just looks a little bit more vibrant when you're using it at the expense of reflections. That's something you need to decide. But either way, that's my review. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.